Welcome to Bitcoin Fixes This, where we explore the impact that Bitcoin will have in all aspects of society. Today's guest is John Fakhoury, CEO, Bitcoiner, and Clubhouse native. We talk about hustle, entrepreneurship, and starting businesses. John also tells us about his childhood, how he started his business, and we talked a bit about how to raise kids with good character. John Fakhoury, how's everything going, man?
Man, dude, I'm still digesting.
From last night?
Yeah, absolutely. We had Wagyu, and you guys, you should never let Jimmy order meat for you.
Oh, come on. It was just like...
I'm just kidding. I felt great, man. I took out about 30 ounces, and I still feel great. So
yeah, that A5 was just like melting.
You know what's crazy, man? The A5 was great, and I love it. I mean, but that tomahawk was absolutely like...
Yeah,
I mean,
did you gnaw off the bone? Because I did that. That was amazing.
I did not.
Oh, that's the best part. I should have told you.
Hold on, is it the top part? Like the very, very top?
No, you have to hold the bone and gnaw at it. That's the only way to get that meat.
Like, so here's the deal. I used to make fun of my mom for biting on bone marrow. And then as an adult, I'd go to a restaurant in Chicago or Vegas or New York and then buy bone marrow for like $140. What the, like, I'm just like twisted on like poverty to wealth real quick.
No, it's so good. It's so good. But yeah, I mean, you worked out this morning. You somehow lost 3 pounds. Tell me more about that.
Yesterday before dinner, I was 174.8. Crunched 35 ounces worth of beef. I don't drink, and I wasn't drinking very much. And somehow after my run this morning, I was like 171.9, 171.8. And I lifted, I got some yoga, and it's hot. I ran 3-4 miles. But yeah, man, the 50 or 40 ounces, whatever the hell we went through yesterday, didn't put a dent in it, man. Body's processing it, man. Thanks for all the carnivoring and fasting that you got me on. Jimmy's so brilliant because he knew just telling me about it wouldn't work. And he just so he framed it in a polite challenge way, and all of a sudden he's like, dude, you're really fasting for 3 days all of a sudden? I'm like, yeah, man, this is great. Why am I freezing?
all that fat gets used, yeah. No, so that's kind of what I want to talk to you about because you describe yourself as a gym rat. I could totally see it, right? Like we tried to record this yesterday, and unfortunately some of the audio got messed up. But you like literally ran over to my hotel, and you're like deadlifting or whatever it is that you're doing this morning. And you're gonna go shoot some basketball hoops and
I'm gonna take this 3-point contest down, but I'm afraid I'm gonna lose now because I just said that. And I feel like if I win, it's just like, oh yeah, John won, and if I lose, I'm gonna not hear the end of it for like 3 months.
Yeah, but this is encompassing what I wanted to talk about with you, which is that the whole sort of like hustle, right? Like it's this idea of like doing things and like taking initiative and not needing direction to go do something, and that's that not needing direction part is very non-fiat. It's very Bitcoin. So I wanted to talk more about that. So what I found fascinating about your story is just sort of like how you grew up and how you got this hustle. So can you tell us a little bit more about what your circumstances were growing up and how you learned to hustle very early on?
Yeah, man. So, and we talked about this a little bit in various forms, but for the audience, like, there's like a nurture element to it, I think. Like the reality is, Jimmy, like, I didn't have a lot of option to drop the ball. My father was murdered. My mother was just a few weeks pregnant with me. She worked really hard. She really laid a really awesome example. And like, I just didn't want to let her down. And I felt like I had this like massive, massive responsibility to like change the economic paradigm for our family. I didn't know what it meant, but like I knew stressful poor was like really terrible. Like it drove like a sense of like, all right, we got to get the fuck out of this, pardon my French. And so, but I also like, man, I mean, I remember being like 8 years old and like convincing the principal at the school that the paint boards needed to be painted and like the desks needed to be cleaned in the summertime. And so I was over there trying to hustle for like this $5 an hour in the summertime, and, in between, getting some shots up or whatever. But yeah, man, I think there's a nurture element to it. My circumstance is one that I certainly wouldn't wish on others, but quite frankly, I'm so glad it happened to me, and it sounds like a really like, I don't know, morbid thing to say, man, but like not having dad to cushion the blow for me and insulate risks for me, to be frank, quite frankly, made the heightened sense of recognizing that there wasn't a lot of room for error, and that helped, man.
That like being forced to be counted on, having sort of no safety net almost,
Sure.
taught you hustle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was as part of it for sure. I mean, I do think there's like, I mean, you know, I don't have to hustle now, right? Like, you know, if you were to think about it in like fiat terms of why people are like, oh, I want to make enough money and never work again. It's like such a fiat, boring mindset, right? Like, it's like, you know, this like, it's like so antithesis to like the beauty of what proof of work actually means in real life, not in just terms of like, you know, electric, you know, thermodynamics and bringing electrons to credibly, you know, prove sound money. But dude, like, I think there's like this element of like innate, you know, consideration to motivation. Like, I see people that have no need to be doing the things that they're doing from just economic motivating factors, from just Maslowian pursuits, if you will. And it's like, why are you still doing it? I didn't have to run to you yesterday, but I had 20 minutes, dude. And I was like getting my juices flowing, and I'm like, damn, Jimmy's taught me so much about Bitcoin. What am I going to tell him? And so, yeah, man, like, there's 86,800 seconds in a day. I FOMO about every one of them. I want every single one of them so bad, and life has gotten so good that I want them even more. And it's gotten this flywheel effect.
Yeah, so that's interesting because you know, your story, like, you know, growing up, obviously there were tragic circumstances and everything else, but as you come out of college, you decide to go and do your own business. So tell us more about that and what hustle it took and what mentality it took and how you kind of prepped yourself to go do something that many people probably thought was kind of crazy.
I had some like entrepreneurial, I think, like ticklings and dabblings earlier, right? So like, I was like 9 years old selling souvenirs at Wrigley Field, like at a time where like you really shouldn't have taken the buses there. But you know, I was like 16 years old and stole my mom's social security number and, you know, opened up a joint tenant account so I could buy like Cisco right after the tech bubble crash, you know. I was doing a lot of things that I think were entrepreneurial, including I was like 17 years old selling shoes on Michigan Avenue to really, really high net worth individuals and high level professionals and travelers from all over the world. And I was making more money than my teachers and parents, quite frankly, at that point, right? And my mom at one point thought I was just selling drugs. She's like, where's this coming from? Like, how are you able to give me hundreds of dollars as a 16, 17-year-old? And
no, you were selling shoes.
I was just trying to angle, man. I really was. I was selling Prada and like, you know, and Jimmy Choo's and you know, Christian Louboutins for those that, you know, are going to call me a high time preference hoe and like on this thing right now. But all joking aside, man, I after college I did a CPA kind of track and did an accounting track at the University of Illinois. Went and interned at Ernst & Young, dabbled at PwC with some friends that my really good friend's dad worked there. And eventually landed at Alvarez and Marcel. And there I realized really quickly that like, yo, like the guys that are at the top level of this need me. Like I remember auditing someone's like comp package and just by realizing through a few questions and interacting with this individual, I will not say their name, I will not say the company's name, but through interacting with this person, I knew that he didn't understand his comp package.
Oh, wow.
He did not understand how his options worked. Didn't matter. And I'm just like this is a publicly traded company, right? Like these numbers that are going into this spreadsheet is going to go to this guy, and this guy is going to use it for this analyst call, and these analysts are going to then, you know, drive the price on the market. This is it. I can do this shit. So while like consulting, I saw an opportunity in IT. IT was like people had as much anxiety dealing with IT issues as they did going to the dentist, right? Like, and it just sucked. Everywhere you went, it was a weakness. Like, you know, technology 100 years ago and founding a framework, at least, and this is kind of where I'm going with this story about how I got to starting framework. It's like, you know, technology 100 years ago was like the fridge, you know, it was like the radio. It's like, you don't think about that as technology, but it made life better in a significant way for people. And in most businesses, technology is not optimized. People are scared to do stuff sometimes because, well, how will it affect this and how will it affect that? Oh, we're going to have to check through 47 people, or whatever. And what we found is that there's just a really strong set of best practices. It turns out that if you eat well, you work out, you sleep well, you take care of yourself, you know, you don't have to go to the doctor all that often, and you're not like dealing with diabetes. And there's a lot of simple best practices that come into IT. The problem is very few people execute them well. And very few people able to scale those operations. And so we've just been able to, like, in a non-sexy way, execute in a really, really awesome way. But to the core of your question, I've been dabbling in that way ever. Like, you see, like, when you're an entrepreneur, you see the world in a very annoyed way. You see the world broken. You want to see it in your way. And there is a you know, an egotistical component of thinking that you are the person to fix that shit. You know, before the trough of despair hits you in the face, recognizing you need a lot of help. I would tell you I had to. Like, this is what I had to do. Like, I would have probably not be, I would have been, would have continued to have been unfulfilled, would have continued to have been frustrated, would have eventually, pushed in that path. I like to think of like that as kind of how that thing kind of came to life and came to fruition.
Well, so you were talking about sort of entrepreneurs seeing the world differently, right? Like you see opportunities where a lot of people, I think, would kind of see nothing. They're like, that doesn't work. Instead, for you, when you get annoyed, when you see a problem, you have a different mentality. You think, well, how do you fix? How would I fix this for somebody? And then you get into, well, how can I make money off of it? It's a very different mentality. So can you talk a little bit about the mentality that, like, how did you get into that mentality? How did that happen?
I don't know that I ever saw the world differently, right? So, like, I literally remember seeing the baseboards at the school being, like, all chalked up. But, no, I think you can exercise those thoughts, right? Like, you can play games and you can continue to, like, refine that kind of methodology. But, success sort of like breeds a little level of success, right? Doing something you never, like, I'm not an IT guy. Framework is one of the best IT service companies on the planet now, and the reality of it is like you learn how to build teams, you learn how to do things, right? Like, and so I would say at this point, like, I'm just trying to solve like real problems. You and I talked about, I almost took a swing at Clubhouse with Backstage, and I realized I didn't care about social media. In fact, I kind of hated it. Like, I didn't want to take a check one day from a bunch of people that were just going to sell the information that we were gathering, right? And so it's just like antithesis to like my beliefs, say, even with like why I love Bitcoin, or at least some of the reasons why I love Bitcoin. But like I would tell you that I don't know that I could have been different, right? And I also think like entrepreneurialism is not for everybody. Like, the problem with the word entrepreneur, I told you this yesterday, is like, it sounds too sexy. Entrepreneur. It's like a French word. It sounds like some shit that they should charge you 4x for at a restaurant. It's like Wagyu or whatever. And so, like, I think, like, in retrospect, like there is a component of problems that you see, right, and then being annoyed. But then there's a certain level that you reach, like Maslowianly. It's like you start to pick the pitches you want to swing at. I still think that there's a product that could be built way better than Clubhouse. But I don't care. And it doesn't really fulfill me. One of the things that I like, and I talked about this with you in a different setting, is just like I kind of feel a sense of obligation to like give back to Bitcoin. I'm sure you feel that, and you're educating and you're teaching. Like, I don't feel that way about like SPY. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel that way about God. I don't even own Tesla, but I maybe that says something. But like, I don't feel that way about other things. Maybe you like. I felt that way maybe about going back to my high school, where like the trajectory of my life changed. But Bitcoin is like where I'm focusing on. It's not an economically maximizing pursuit, but rather a value maximizing pursuit. I think for me, what's next, and not that that's the core of your question, but rather like, how do I think I see it? How do I continue to see it? Is through like, is there a problem there? Can I fix it? Is it like an economically viable problem to fix? What's the total? Like, I start to go into like, business mode, if you will. But really, the core of it is like, what do I really want to do now? Right? I don't want to like bombard this answer, but I think this is probably a good point that I wanted to readdress today. It's like, when you're broke, right? When you're economically like walls kind of crashing in on you, you're like, yo, how do I get money? How do I get money? 8-year-old John was like trying to fucking paint baseboards. How do I get money? How do I get money? Right? How do I continue to increase cash? How do I increase money? And then when you reach certain economic paradigms, you start to focus on, how can I get more time? Right? People say time is money. It starts to shift. I think they're like this like scale where like, and as you continue to build economic and maybe social wealth to that extent, you start to wonder, how can I experience this longer? How can I hold on to this? How can I get some of that time back? And that is one of the like beauties of how Bitcoin, for me, as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as just like a citizen of the world, can start to just like reclaim my time. And so like now as an entrepreneur, to kind of bring it full circle, knowing that I can like reclaim my time, not be driven just by economic factors. I'm looking at like entrepreneurial pursuits in a little bit of a different fashion than like 23, 24-year-old that was trying to bootstrap framework to get to some economic viability.
Well, so I want to touch back on something that you said, which I thought was interesting, because there is sort of like an annoyance, and you can sort of see the business plan or like the possibilities, and you have that. But there's another component to that, isn't there? There's a sort of like a willingness to take a chance on yourself. There's a courage component, which I think is extremely underrated. I know a lot of brilliant people. They probably had a lot of good ideas, but like you were saying, it's the execution part, and that execution requires a level of bravery, of courage, of fortitude, of being able to stick with something and see it through to completion without knowing how successful you will be. So can you tell us a little bit more about where you find the strength to do that, how you get to the point where you can just be like, hey, you know what, like, I can do this. And like, I might fail, and it's okay if I fail, but I wanna take my shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so 23, 24-year-old John didn't have kids, right? So the scale was a lot different. I thought about this more since we talked about yesterday, because this is one of those like chicken and egg things, you know? Yeah. I do think there's like the success breeds success conversation where like, dude, like I was doing things at a high level at times that I probably shouldn't have done it. Like I shouldn't have been the highest like, salesperson on the Nordstrom shoe floor in the country. Like I was like 17, you know? And I recognized, oh man, I can acquire this skill. And like in having a growth mindset, I recognized that this was just another challenge. And as I continued to look back on the things that I accomplished, all of them continued to seem more and more possible. And then it continued through like business, success as well. But the other part of this too is that I think like the reality is like a lot of entrepreneurs, if not most, are kind of like arrogantly egotistical. Like it does kind of take a sense of arrogance to be like, I could do this shit better.
Yeah. It does.
And maybe it's necessary, you know? Like, one person's confidence is another person's arrogance, right? Where does that line bleed?
Yeah.
And I think that there's like some part of the enzyme, if you will, to like get this like catalyst going, if you will, is like there's some like self-belief. One of the things that like connected Hodl and I when we first met, you and I talked about this, is like he said, before I could buy Bitcoin, I had to believe in myself. Before you can start and generate any sense of value, I think you have to believe in oneself. And like, for American Hodl, it was a real full-fledged dedication in economic, bet on Bitcoin for me, and that was betting on himself too, right? And for me, it was like doubling down as J. Cole on yourself. Like when it's me, I want to double down on me. When it's other people as an angel investor, I'm more trepidatious. Right? Like almost sometimes I think about when I'm investing in other companies, like, oh man, is this something I can help beyond the capital? Right? Because like I trust me, and that's an arrogant thought, to be honest.
Well, I mean, arrogant, but also you're most familiar with yourself, whereas you're not familiar with other people. So in a sense, that confidence is somewhat warranted because you ought to know yourself better than anybody else.
I think it's important too, though. You're honest about your weaknesses.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think one of the things that like has really helped me, if I'm, I doubt most people that probably are listening to this that know me, Jimmy, are probably like, wow, that guy's not like humble. Isn't the first 20 words that come to mind. But like the reality of it is, I am honest about my weaknesses. I was with Dredd last night. We were drinking, and I was having a couple beers with Dredd, and I lied. He had like 4, and I had none. But I was holding the beer, and I told him, he's like, dude, you got a voice, and I'm like, dude, I hate my voice. He's like, you're too hard on yourself. I was like, dude, I love me. I just hate my voice. I'm honest about hating my voice. And so the thing is, like, I don't feel like, I think like confidence is important, right? But being overconfident is dangerous. And I think the way that you can caution being overconfident is being honest about where your pitfalls are. Now, lucky for me, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't need to be perfect. In fact, I love the word failure now. Like most people hear the word failure and it sets off all these negative twists in their brain, like their neurotransmitters are like fire, warning, failure, avoid it, right? And I think like for most people that's what happens when they're looking at an entrepreneurial pursuit. There's plenty of entrepreneurs out there that if they could push past the idea of failure being a negative word, of like the like trauma, like the sort of catastrophication of what failure would look like, Like for me, yeah, things got lucky on my first shot, like which is not very common in starting your first business. That it was, cash flow positive. It was, growing,
I mean,
etc.
The thing is, it wasn't your first business. You were painting baseboards and selling freaking shoes or whatever.
Business. You're right. That's probably a lot. In fact, I joke all the time, Jimmy. I learned more at Nordstrom's than I did like at the University of Illinois. And I studied hard. I worked hard. But I think like there is a sense of like if you can be honest about those weaknesses and then complement those weaknesses. So my business partners are killers, man. Like, and they complement me in significant ways. There's a lot of yings to yangs. Like we have some of the most talented people in the world working there when they could be working anywhere else. Like everybody at Framework could go work at Google or go work at Facebook or go work at any other like top notch.
That'd be a little cringe, those companies. Sure,
yeah, I was gonna say the lunch pail, but they I was gonna say please don't leave the Google and Facebook. Go pick something worthy and noble. But yeah, man, like it's the truth. And so I've been honest about those things, and I try to caution my confidence with recognizing what I'm not great at. And then when I fuck up, it's like I don't care that much. Like failure to me just sounds like market research now.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, what's next?
Well, so there is sort of like that fiat fear of failure.
Hell yeah.
Because like failure is so consequential in a fiat world where you're dependent on something or someone or some institution or some job or something like that. And if you fail, it's all or nothing. Whereas in an entrepreneurial endeavor, when you fail, it's just a setback, or it's not catastrophic like people make it out.
Jimmy, think about all the things that like you or I probably economically could, acquire for our families or for our kids, right? Why don't we do it?
It's not worth it. Yeah.
Like you don't value it.
Yeah.
What I recognize in the fiat mindset is so many people are worried what other people are thinking about their fiat they're standing. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. I thought about it a little bit on my run this morning, and I recognize like 26-year-old John is wearing like trunk club, like when you asked me for a headshot, I'm like, dude, all my pictures now are in t-shirts and Lululemon. I'm not in suits anywhere. I don't even know what to send this dude. I was like, I had to find something. I couldn't even find it. And it's just like, I was in this like fiat pursuit. I don't even say fiat pursuit because I didn't even think about it in that way, but I was too worried about seeking other people's approval. Yeah. And it's so fiat. Yeah. It's like, what car do you drive? What neighborhood do you live in? You know what I love now?
What?
I love showing up to the country club in like a Nissan Leaf. I only bought a Tesla because I needed more range life after my kids were born. Okay, so I know everyone's like, well, John, you drive a Tesla, blah, blah, whatever. So like, the thing is, I think it's such a fiat consideration because they're worried about what the rest of the world views about their success. Yeah. The fulfillment isn't internal. I mean, one of the reasons that I didn't pursue Backstage, for instance, is like I could have done, if I would have achieved the highest level of success. Like I thought about what that would look like, I wouldn't have been fulfilled.
Yeah, there's no upside there.
It was like, what am I doing? I'm going to be marginally more wealthy and like lose like 7 years of my kids' time and then not be happy about winning? Yeah. It's like putting a big fish on your boat only to sink it, And so, yeah, man, I think there is this fiat pursuit. I think there is, I think there's a fiat failure, or a fear of failure that is inherently tied into a system that rewards materialism and high time preference. Yeah. About, why you go get your Facebook, early Facebook stock cashed in and go buy a Lambo. That's cute. I don't care. I just want my time back. Like I'm FaceTime with my daughter last night, and I just want 5 more minutes back, dude. So it's just like, I do think there's like an inherent consideration of like they're aiming for the wrong thing in the first place. Of course, they're worried about failure. Failure means not acquiring the car or the house they want, dude.
Well, what you said reminds me of something. So in a fiat system, you're very fragile to failure, right? If you fail, that might be the end of your academic career. That might be the end of your tenure track or whatever. There are some significant consequences to failure. You're very fragile in that way. So you're looking to not win, right? Like we talked about this a little bit before. You're shooting to not lose instead of shooting to win. Whereas with an entrepreneur, you're way more anti-fragile, where failure actually strengthens you. It's like what you said. It's market research. You get better.
If the gazelle doesn't get hunted by the lion, it won. Okay, until it gets hunted by the lion. The lion is only losing until it hunts the gazelle, and then it's the fucking king again. And I think one is clearly the entrepreneur, the other is clearly the person trying to navigate the forest. Like, I want a secure job, so I'm going to go work for corporate America. And then there's an M&A, and they're gone 2 weeks later. Hey, is that really security anyway? I do think that there is a function of people that don't see it that way, right? Like the entrepreneur wants to go to the free throw line with the game on the line. The entrepreneur might miss the shot, but the entrepreneur is considering, I want to eliminate all things that I cannot control. I want that.
You want the independence. Yeah.
I want control over my destiny. Right? And the opposite pursuit of that is the safety net of like, you know,
unemployment,
or even just the fucking, you know, stump salary and 401k and, you know, 7.5% returns, and then market crash 5 years later and money printer go burr, right? And like, so yeah, I think there is like a sincere connection around like the entrepreneur certainly is the guy that's going for the win, and like the lack of pursuit for the other person is just a function of them like trying not to lose, trying not to go hungry, trying not to lose their home, right? And it's like, dude, like that. And by the way, that's not respectable, by the way, right? But it is an endemic kind of pursuit, and I think that there is a sincere correlation between like, you know, the risk aversion entrepreneurial pursuit of a Bitcoiner, and that of like someone that's not even knowingly stuck in a fiat mindset.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what we've been talking about. Bitcoiners have more hustle than the non-Bitcoiner, the fiat person. You know, they're not really even interested in looking for opportunities. They're more interested in keeping what they have.
There's no staking. There's no proof of stake. There is no, my daddy gave me enough money to like get into the society, to get into the technocratic oligarchy that basically runs, like right now in America, right? The country that was founded on like, you know, breaking a feudal system, essentially, you know, with a little bit of spice of religious freedom. Like right now, the biggest factor that's going to determine one's net worth as an adult is their parents' net worth.
Yeah.
Like that is proof of stake. That is Cantillon effect at its finest form. I mean, that is like the most refined form in my mind. And so, like to me, what the beauty of proof of work and thinking about it in those terms is like, you can't fake this shit. Right? Like there's a meritocracy. Like right now, 19-year-olds on the planet can create more economic value than in any time in the history of value, right? Like, I mean, like you could be a 19-year-old and create billions of dollars worth of value, employ hundreds, if not thousands of people, change the way people live life. And that's only something because like you're not going through this like system of life that's functioned on where you should be, what college you should have gone to, when you should have graduated, when you should have went to law school, med school, blah 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 blah, how long you should have been an accountant before you became managing, whatever the bullshit. Can you deliver the goods? Right, and that's one of the reasons, in fairness, in terms of like framework success, is that there's been a Bitcoin mentality to it. There's been this like proof of work consideration to, can you get this shit done? Right, and so there's like guys like Carson Chang and Jeremy Hernandez who introduced me to Bitcoin, by the way, and I just finally got him to buy Bitcoin like a month ago, which is crazy to me that the person that introduced me to Bitcoin, it took me 5 years to get him to buy Bitcoin. But like they're 21, 23, 25, they're running shit. And like it's because they have like proof of validation. They're doing the work. And like I know it's not what we're talking about again in like thermodynamic, kind of true honesty of what brings Bitcoin to life, but like there is a lot of similarity in the culture that I think has bred a success in what isn't really technologically, like we're not like running a bunch of patents or like proprietary tech. We're just executing better through like simple proof of work. But like I would also say, like, to the heart of your question, like people in the fiat world, in my mind, see a finish line. Like, and if they were living our lives, they might have thought they've already crossed that finish line. But like, I feel like we're just getting started.
Of course.
And that is a different mindset. Like, they're too focused on how much economic security they can get. And I get it. Like, by the way, the world's banging their heads in. Like, think about like what inflation and money printing has done to all the things that matter to them: school, food, education, just like all the housing, right? Like all the things that it's like difficult and stressful. I mean, raising kids is tough. And it's like, like trying to do that is noble. It's just the wrong game to play. And once you see the game and you understand what the game that Bitcoin has like provided in terms of an exit route to this like non-stop treadmill, then you can really start to understand and prioritize the things that matter to you, reclaim that time, and focus on the game that you actually should and probably want to play. Instead of focusing on this finish line of how much money do I need to make to send my kid to college so they can be spending, whatever, right? The game is about continuing to provide value, that there is no finish line. The finish line is the next goal, period.
Yeah.
And as soon as you pass that, it's time to keep moving.
Yeah. I mean, the fiat mentality, I think what you're saying is finishing somebody else's goal. And with sort of like a hustler and entrepreneurial mindset, it's making your own goals. And it's and people are very uncomfortable with making their own goals. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you something that I've learned about. Like, I can almost tell you right away if I know someone owns Bitcoin or not or understands it. If they tell me that they need to kill time, I'm just going to go kill some time. You'd never hear that from someone who truly understood Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Do you know that would like that evokes anger? That evokes like this such an uncomfortable. I'm like getting goosebumps right now. Jimmy's laughing at me, and we're like 90 degrees in Miami. But like that's the craziest thing in the world to me, right? Like I want to go kill some time. It's the only thing I can't get back.
Yeah,
it's the only thing I can't get back, and so like I'm constantly focused on how can I do the most with this like scarce asset, time, and. You know, an entrepreneur now, and especially I think entrepreneurs that start to like get to, perhaps they're past their first business, perhaps they're not living in their couch surfing or whatever doing to try to bootstrap their business. Start to like focus in on the problems that can advance the world and bring some economic value too. And like, I really would encourage, especially those that are, in the nexus of Bitcoin and entrepreneurialism, and I think there's a massiveness, and I think there's a mass dearth relative to the amount of talent that's in this community. I hate you saying this like, vague community, but like when you look at other industries, there's just a ton of talent, and there's just a dearth of talent relative to the amount of capital that is there to be employed. And I think if you talk to NEVC, they would tell you that. I'm sure you've had this conversation too.
Well, because the capital is like very abundant with the money printer. Yeah.
Welcome to the fiat, M2 supply, but. I really think that like, and one of the things that maybe is kind of what I'm trying to cultivate, maybe even work on next, is bringing, and the struggle is there's like a lot of people that want to invest in Bitcoin companies, and the struggle is like, I'm just going to invest in Bitcoin. The underlying asset's really difficult to like, from an, weighted opportunity cost to like not do it. It's happening to me all the time as I get, more angel pitch decks sent to me, but I do want to try to find a way to cultivate more talent to lead more things, especially in the like wide open landscape of what Lightning I think is going to bring to the table. I mean, there's just like, and I know you and I have chatted about this a little bit, and we've been on Clubhouse talking about this, but like I am so bullish on what Lightning is going to mean for the advancement of Bitcoin in the long term, and I think the means of bringing and cultivating entrepreneurs in this space isn't about like coming up with 5 new hardware wallets. So we got enough like hardware wallets, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps we got to figure out a way to make it more mainstream for grandma, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But like for me, it's going to be how do we build on Lightning and beyond, and that's going to take a lot of visionary, and it's going to take a lot of people, by the way, like us, that need to invest in those types of people. Both for Bitcoin, and for our personal, portfolios too, because to me, in terms of the market's going to be awesome. The market of Bitcoin and what it's going to bring in terms of value to the world is unspeakable. So now can we put the right talent there to kind of to extract that? And that's what I'm trying to figure out, and it's what I'm talking to a lot of our friends, a lot of our mutual friends about, and trying to cultivate a plan to bring more talent into the nexus of what Bitcoin's going to need.
Yeah, so talking about that, right? Like, because in a sense, like the way that the fiat investment like startup thing works, and you and I are very familiar with this. If you're a $10 million business, no one cares. If you're a $1 billion business, they start caring.
But everybody cares.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They only look for a particular size because that's what gets an advantage in this current market with the way the fiat monetary system works. So in a sense, everything's like too high stakes, right? It's very fragile. If you fail a lot.
It's very
right?
binary, I think. You're right in that way.
There are lower stake things that I think can make money that a lot of entrepreneurs can do, but just no one's interested in them because they have to play this fiat game.
Because they need 700x to keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
They need 7,000x.
But if you do it with Bitcoin, I think you can have like $5 million businesses, and that's okay.
And by the way, those businesses, you know what they do, which a lot of these other businesses don't do? They profit.
Yeah.
What a fucking crazy deal. You know, Instagram got bought for $1 billion. Zero revenue.
Yeah.
18 months later.
Yeah.
Why? Because Facebook has the Cantillon printer at their fucking disposal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when I was reading Jeff's book, Jeff Booth, Price Tomorrow, if you haven't read it, right after you're done reading Jimmy's book, read
I've had him on this podcast, so
I love Jeff, and I'm pretty sure I listened to that, but I've seen Jeff on a number of different programs lately, so it might be intertwining. But long story short, Jeff talks about a lot of these terms and like his deflationary thesis, right? And like the reality of it is like, it's like one of the reasons that I don't take or don't give away more equity for capital at Framework is, we're cash flow positive or, profitable business, we're able to reinvest in a healthy way. The other reason is because the debt equity equation just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The money's so cheap.
Yeah.
Right, but in a Bitcoin world,
money's not that cheap.
Money shouldn't be cheap.
Yeah.
Money's language, right? And so the reality is that really profitable businesses and really, really predictably profitable businesses are going to be more valued for investors in passive investments, right? Like we'll start to understand what real pricing and real structure looks like when industries like corn and oil and just figure out all the other things that are just subsidized.
Yeah.
For even, quite frankly, our detriment.
Yeah.
Like I'm listening to the government tell me how bad Bitcoin is for the environment. Meanwhile, how many billions of dollars you giving to the oil companies? Right?
Yeah.
Right. Like I see how bad and how much money we're spending on our healthcare system, right? And it's just like, well, why are you subsidizing sugar?
Yeah.
It's like, so like in a Bitcoin world, we're gonna start seeing real industry.
Yeah.
We're gonna start seeing real pricing. We're gonna
real
start
interest
seeing
rates.
real interest rates, and you know what else we're gonna see? Real business owners.
Yeah.
No longer is it just going to be the couple of dildos that kind of graduated with a couple of degrees from Stanford.
Yeah.
Got
MBA,
tied in.
yeah.
And it's just like you're tied in the Silicon Valley funding structure.
Yeah.
You know X, Y, and Z. And maybe now perhaps you and I are in that world too, on some side of the fence, having lived both sides. But like that real value, like there is no more bullshitting in a Bitcoin world. And it's just going to be a more honest world economically, even in those minor transactions. Companies that like private equity investing companies are going to look at that $5, $10, $20, $30 million business, $50 million business that, is got strong, perhaps even like Framework, has got strong predictable revenue, subscription revenue, low churn, whatever, right? And they're going to invest in it and have strong returns because they're not going to have the Cantillon system inflating their bullshit where we got Cape-Shiller ratios pushing 35, 40, it's just out of control. So yeah, I mean, obviously you and I biasly knew we agreed about this before we discussed it, but it's no less valid, it's no less true.
The whole system just seems so out of whack, right? Like the pricing's off, new money, on opportunity, like foregoing opportunity costs and all sorts of things. But Bitcoin brings some of that back. Bitcoin brings back like the sexiness of profit and dividends
and saving.
Every yield and stuff like that.
Saving is cool again.
Yeah, I mean, like this is one of the most frustrating things is that when you have lots of fiat money, it really does become kind of a Keynesian beauty contest. Amazon, I don't think has ever paid out dividends. Like, technically speaking, that should be worth zero if it never pays a dividend. But it's popular. It's a lot of people want it, and it becomes a popularity
the value of their
contest.
Future cash flows, but I never get any of the cash flow.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand the discounted cash flow model then.
It doesn't make any sense. But in a Bitcoin world, that stuff starts making all the sense in the world.
It's one of the reasons that why does it not make why do all these companies back into these things in terms of a SPAC? Why do companies want to avoid being a security? It's so much of a crazy headache to do, right? And so I would say, if you can, in a Bitcoin world where you have true business, you have true money, you have true, quite frankly, need to actually demonstrate the crazy, novel idea of being profitable and not just having a trillion users use a platform to poke each other from China to Chicago. I think that will allow for that type of an environment and allow for economic meritocracy, for a removal of so-and-so being so-and-so because they came from so-and-so. Like, first of all, nothing annoys me more, and it's already happening, right? Like, American Hodl got Cynthia Loomis to put laser eyes on, right? The reality is the crazy guy on Twitter who gets kicked off every 3 weeks has Jack Dorsey following him on Twitter.
Well, I mean, he's not off Twitter right now. But check the hour, right? But my point is that, like, there's going to be dare I say it, there's going to be a lot of really young, wealthy Bitcoiners. And they're going to be able to, like, sway decision-making in this country and in this world with their economic means, If an ExxonMobil and, AstraZeneca can write checks, there's going to be a lot of Bitcoiners that are going to be in really different economic positions to change what this looks like. And, like, I'm super stoked. Like, if I asked you the question, Jimmy, do you expect more or less Bitcoin support in the American Congress in the next 10 years? Would you say more or less? More, of
course. And I think anybody that says less now, does that mean that they're going to be passing bills that are all no. But the trend line is so clear. Number go up, even for congressmen and senators. And, like, your local politicians, which, by the way, is going to drive this way faster than the Beltway does. Mark my words. And, like, all of it, everyone is going to have to come to truth. Bitcoin will make everything, everyone, every industry surrender to truth.
Instead of living a lie, and a fragile lie versus an anti-fragile truth.
Well, dude, I mean, the safety net of corporate America is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Of course they don't have to be profitable.
Yeah.
They can blow shit up and get a fucking airlift.
Yeah.
It's like they're like my buddies in college who perhaps crashed the car and then got a Porsche delivered. Why? You should have crashed the car, for Christ's sake. And that economic incentive, that's so backwards.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're pushing negative interest rates. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
The idea to disincentivize saving money, right? Everybody's parents, right, would be happy if their kids were saving money, right? Well, like, the government's telling you exactly not to.
Yeah.
Like, we got
at every level. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like, if individuals, companies, governments, everybody is disincentivized.
There's no reason. If you were saving money in dollar terms, you're an absolute bonkers idiot, right? And that's why, like, I literally explained Bitcoin to my mom in terms of, like, Mom, you're right. I should have been saving more. Bitcoin is like Bitcoin made saving real again. Like, that's the only thing you can save. That's the only thing you can hodl. Everything else is burning a hole in your pocket. You got to move it.
Yeah. Well, so that reminds me of something that I wanted to talk about. So you're talking about all of these sort of, like, fiat rich kids, right? Like that end up kind of in this very bad position of bad incentives, evil incentives almost, where they get into positions where they do stuff that's not very good for them. Like where they crash cars because they want a new car or something like that, and they've lived too comfortable a life. And I share your enthusiasm that a bunch of Bitcoiners that are all hustling, that will change things tremendously. Yeah. But there is still some of that danger of sort of raising the next generation of kids that do come from money, right? Like we have a decent chance of raising kids in an environment where they're going to have a lot of things that they want.
That we didn't.
Yeah, so how do we make sure that they still have hustle?
So I actually think the world is going to make that easier. One of the cool things about re-recording this, one, I didn't get to run before this, so I didn't get the endorphin pump. But the two, I thought about this more, and this is a catch-22 for sure. One, I think we got to lead by example, right? Like my kids don't listen to me; they just do what I do.
Yeah.
You know it. Anybody who's a parent does it all the time because their kids will do something they don't like, and they know exactly where they got it. And if they don't, they're really mad and try to go find the teacher. But Trunk Club suit, John, and Nike t-shirt and shorts, John, that's sitting here today. Like, my kids, I took my daughter to the Cubs game the other day, and she wasn't like pointing for the cotton candy and for the ice cream and this and that. The reality is because I don't. Does my family have nice things, and have I, tried to provide some nice things? Absolutely, right? But could we afford much more? Sure.
Yeah.
Do we care? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so I think by literally just not being that high time preference hoe that I talk about and setting that example, that's the best. I think one, we have to surrender that we can't control it all.
Yeah.
And then two, from what we can control, we got to be focused on our example more than our words and our teaching.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is the world's going to look different.
Oh, yeah.
Bitcoin rewards, but Bitcoin penalizes.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's truth.
Yeah.
And so, right now, this con game that we're living in, that we're raising in, is headed in a different direction. Do I think it's going to be all roses and daisies and flowers and no? There's going to be a lot. There's going to be so much that economic revolution will inevitably cause, and I don't know what that looks like. You don't know what that looks. No one does, right? But to be naive to that is crazy. But on the other end of that, as we continue to head in that direction, we're going to be headed toward a more honest world. Yeah. They're going to have to live that.
Yeah, the market.
They can't lie to it. Yeah. And so, I think between the examples we set, I think between the world that is headed in a direction that seems to me inevitable, I think that there's market forces that are going to check our kids.
Yeah.
And God damn it, I'm still scared. Excuse my blasphemy here, but yeah, man, I think about it all the time, and I know you do too. I mean, we talked about this before the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's scary.
They're not going to have government bailouts, certainly, but they still have us. And how much
if
of
they
a
call
bailout?
us, we might be weak.
And how much of a bailout do you provide for them? And it's how much do they sort of abuse that and depend on that? And that's sort of the role of a parent that is very hard, because you want to help your kids, but if they're drug addicts and they're coming to you for money so they can go buy more smack,
sure.
There's a line you got to draw. So where do you draw that line?
Yeah, so the same money that gets them a math tutor to help them through math class, right? It's it's tough, and I've seen it, right? And I've seen it in kind of living on both sides of the fence in economic America. But I think one of the other things that I think about it is how do I create adversity in a safe way?
Yeah.
So I'm actually less concerned about how do I respond to the helicopter bailout of my kid crashing the car or doing something stupid, right? In fact, I remember at one point telling my nephews and nieces, listen, at some point in your life you're going to do something, you're going to regret it, okay? You're not going to want to call mommy and daddy, and so. What you're
Uncle
gonna
John
do instead,
here,
I don't want you to not you don't talk to anybody. You just you call me, okay? You're too scared to call them. Call me. And so I realized I already kind of was like, yo, you gotta bail out. That's what I told them. But and I imagine in a moment like that, we're probably just gonna throw water on fire and teach them a lesson later. That's probably what's gonna happen. But what I'm more worried about is just focusing on a function of as our friends are going to bombard us right now. I'm really focused about how do I create safe adversity. And Nithi didn't think I could shimmy. But anywho, how can we create fake adversity? And that's the thing that's going to be tricky, right? How do I fake the consideration of leaving my kids in a safe environment, but one that I can, still teach them what I want to teach them. And so, yeah, our friends are distracting us now and giving us hugs because we're at Bitcoin 2021.
Right. Yeah,
but I do think that if we could create that adversity in a safe way, and so maybe it's sports, right? Maybe it's really trying to teach them about what you and I went through. Maybe it's about taking them and helping them to understand things and showing them through the value of service, through the value of helping others, through the value of recognizing we have abundance. And letting them recognize that what they have is actually incredibly valuable and lucky. And I don't know that that's actually still the answer.
Yeah.
But that's literally the best I could come up with, and it's still not helping me sleep better.
Well, I mean, that's a great answer, though. And you didn't have this answer yesterday, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think about it a lot. So I was thinking about it because, that's the type of thing that scares you. And for a lot of people listening to this, you may not even be encountering this now because you maybe you think you only own like half a Bitcoin or a couple of whatever it is. I don't even want to talk about that in those terms. But the reality is, like, what you think might be the case now might be really, really different 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. I mean, it's happened for so many people that we both know.
Yeah.
And so, like, it changes really significantly, really quickly. And I think I'd encourage people to start wrestling with these incredibly difficult thoughts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do like this idea of sort of like giving them sort of reps at adversity without real, like, serious consequences or whatever. And that's a really good idea. But there is, at some point, like, you know, you do have to impart your values. You do have to make sure that they understand where things are going to be, and, you know, the sort of like expectations that they can expect from you, and making sure that they are confident in what they're going to do and what they're going to face, and not being scared of it. Because that to me, that courage is just so missing in fiat world, and like that, the last year and a half have just been absolutely clear on that. Very few people are very courageous because they're so trapped in the fiat mindset. And like encouraging that and making that, and I do agree that some of that comes through just having a free market and them just learning through that, but there is an element of teaching that we have to do.
That's really profound, and I'm like, you can see my wheels turning as you're discussing it, and like, I think there's ways to create risk reward in ways that don't matter to us, that matter to them.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know the modalities completely, but like, what if, like, you know, you allowed for some outcome-based consideration, and maybe you're already doing that, right? Like, if you do this, then you get that, right? If you do this, then the reward is fine. And so, I think, like, one of the things that I'm going to challenge myself to do is trying to create risk-reward structures for my children in safe but meaningful ways, and trying to help impart lessons through recognizing that, like, there isn't always, like, a participant ribbon. You know,
it's not the millennial. Everyone gets a trophy.
15th place. There's too many there's too many places on that, and so the thought is to, like, fix it. I think Rob's looking for me. So, but all joking aside, man, like that is where, like, after, you know, spending some time thinking about it after we talked about yesterday, that's kind of where I've come to challenge myself, you know, and thinking about. And you know, doing it for a 3-year-old is gonna be different than for when she's 5 and 7 and whatever, and 9 and 10. And like, I'm left in a place where that's the approach I'm gonna do. And then the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be calling Uncle Jimmy and being, how are these experiments working, bro? What should I do? He's got way more than I got, so I got.
Well, I mean, you're just 10 years behind me. That's all. But yeah, I mean, you'll get there, right? Like,
between me and Jimmy, we're gonna have a full whatever you want kind of team, like basketball, football, whatever. Yeah, who knows?
Well, I hope you have more kids. I mean, obviously the hustle is so important, and making sure that, like, your children get those values. And I think that's, you know, this is something that not a lot of people think about as, but your children are a gift to the world.
Oh my God, Jimmy. Oh my God. I mean, like, one of the things I do in part of, like, I bring my kids downstairs to the gym with me. My daughter's doing battle ropes with me, man. You know, and it's like she wants to do, like, she wants to be part of what you're doing. But like, I do, man. I feel like I knew I was gonna love my kids, right? You know it, right? You haven't even met them yet. You love them, and you feel this ridiculous, like, dad protective and, like, instinct. But like, you then start to realize that you actually count on their love too.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Like, the thing is, like, I knew I had to love them, and they count on me.
Yeah.
But then I start to realize, oh my God.
Yeah, they love us. Yeah.
They love us. And by the way, I need that love more than any other love. Like, my wife don't love me, my mom don't love me, my friends and family don't, whatever. But my daughter's, like, not loving dad, game over, right? And so,
well, you might get manipulated a little bit.
Oh man,
depends on that too much.
When you're, like, telling me about bailing her out, I'm like, the girl already knows what Chanel is. The game's over, right? But yeah, dude, I feel a real strong consideration that, like, and I want to say this humbly, but like, the 2 humans we brought, and, you know, you're 6, like, these are literally, like, gifts to the world.
They are.
And I'd encourage all Bitcoiners that, you know, are really into it beyond, like, number go up. Yo, it's so much easier to raise and indoctrinate your children than it is to, like, orange pill other people. So we can just, like, can just breed them out of extinction. No, I kid. But no, man, I agree. Like, you know, children are, like, and for anybody who's listening that is a parent, totally understands us, and anybody who's not is probably laughing and like, oh, these guys are being mushy, like these soft betas. But No, man, like they really are a gift, and the game doesn't.
Well,
like,
they're not just a gift to the world; they're a gift to ourselves too.
Oh my
our
God.
older selves, our future selves. So it's amazing.
And the thing about it, though, is there is no more proof of work than raising children.
Yes.
And you see it, like you see your imprints every day in their development, and you recognize how you have to hold yourself to account in ways that you never could have without having that human.
Sometimes that's a little shameful when you realize they got your flaws, but
and when they have your wife's flaws, but of course our wives don't have any, so I'm just kidding here. But before we go home to no more steak, yeah.
All right. Well, John, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Jimmy. I had fun, man.
Where can people find you, man?
Listen, come to Sunday Satoshi service so we can make fun of people calling us a cult, and we can rescue all the shitcoiners.
CJ and I had like the best thing for like the next conference. Oh. We need a Bitcoin baptismal, like full immersion, and we'll have a Sunday Satoshi service with real. Like, do you promise to
forsake? I can't make this announcement, but I will. I didn't hear this idea, but maybe in the next month or so there might be something like that in a real live, not just a virtual Sunday Satoshi service. I can't say anything today.
You gotta have a full baptismal, all like
Duncan heads.
Yeah, Duncan. And you say, do you forsake all shitcoins?
Hey,
all that
everybody
stuff,
listening to Jimmy's podcast, send him a DM saying he has to be the one helping me with the baptism, or this isn't going down. But yeah, find me on Twitter, hit me up at PayItForwardDad, find me on Instagram, send me a DM or whatever. But yeah, some people want to be rich and famous, Jimmy. I'm fine with just without the famous brothers. So.
I think you're too late for that, buddy. Yeah.
But just come hang out, and if you're ever around, if you're at the conference, if you're hanging out, come say hi, man. Come say hello. I enjoy talking to all people.
All right. Well, thanks for this whole thing, and let's see if I could get this out as soon as possible. All right,
Jimmy. Appreciate you, brother.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Bitcoin Fixes This. John can be found at @PayItForwardDad on Twitter. Until next time, fiat delenda est.